And hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Tim and Jim Show. I'm Tim Sohn here in Pennsylvania with Sohn Social Media Solutions. And good morning, my friend, Mr. Jim Fuse.
Good morning, Tim. It's great to be here. But before we get into the show, a little bit of a serious note. Praying for all our friends, family, and even if we're not friends or family, folks in Florida. Look, this is very serious. Tim, you probably remember, it's actually about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Myself, I had to evacuate from Eastern North Carolina as I was hit by Hurricane Florence, caused over $70,000 of damage to my home. 36 inches of rain went through the roof. And they're talking about some serious rain. And this thing is a 4. I evacuated when they said it was going to be a 4. It went down to a 1, but this is not something to take lightly. They said this could be the worst storm to hit Western Florida since, I think, early in the 1900s. So praying for everybody. And so it's not lost on us as we have this show today that there are other people that are going to be having some struggles. So definitely keep an eye out for how you can maybe help folks. And being up here in Georgia, not that far from Florida, who knows, I might do something crazy like drive down there and try to help out. But enough of that. And, it's exciting to have our guest here today, Katie Brinkley. We got to know Katie. I got to know her at Lima, as well as Podcast Movement. That was a lot of fun as well. And she was a speaker there. She was a speaker in Lima, a terrific speaker. And so today we're going to talk about something that she is crushing it with, and that's how to use podcasting to grow your business. She actually does a podcast on Fireside, which has to do with NFL football, which I thought was pretty cool because, of course, Tim,
sports.
get my sports thing in. And Katie is a big sports fan. She's a big Colorado Avalanche fan, and in fact, it was funny because in Lima, her and Kim Garst were like frenemies, we'll say, because she is a big Tampa Bay Lightning fan. So that was a lot of fun. And so, but yeah, so we've got Katie here. So Katie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. And when we were talking back in podcast movement, Jim, it was just like hanging out with an old friend. I can't believe that we've only been able to spend time together like a couple events now, but I'm a social media strategist. I am an avid podcaster. I come from radio. That was my main job that I went to school for. I was the post-game reporter for the Colorado Rockies, the Denver Broncos, the Colorado Avalanche here in Denver. As Jim said, I am a huge sports buff. So I actually have 3 podcasts. It's starting to turn into a problem. But one of them is on Fireside, and that's the NFL Across the Pond podcast, where my co-host is in Scotland. I'm obviously here in Denver, and we talk NFL football once a week, and that goes live on Fireside and then onto the RSS streams. I also have an NFT podcast, the NFT Ninjas, which is 5 days a week podcast. And then my first podcast, which is Rocky Mountain Marketing. And that's the one that really transformed my business. It transformed the way that I do business, and it opened up a world of opportunity, which I think is the goal for today's conversation. I mean, although I'm happy to talk all things, Denver Broncos. Actually, let's not talk about the Broncos because it's been pretty disappointing here in Broncos country.
But they did win. They did win.
The Chiefs lost. So that, that's always a good sign when the Chiefs lose, even if the Broncos are still playing abysmal. So,
but they did win. So at least there's that. We won't talk about my team because they were horrible, but the Commandalorians just, I don't know what to think anymore, But yeah, so let's dive into this topic because it's going to be, I think, something a lot of people are going to get value from. And so, Tim, you want to start us out with question number 1?
Sure, absolutely. So why should a business consider starting a podcast anyway?
Well, I think that one of the biggest reasons for starting a podcast, and I know a lot of business owners are going to be like, oh God, I have nothing to say. Like, what am I going to say all the time? But really, it opens up a world of possibility. So whether or not, let's just say that you are a realtor and you want to start a podcast, that is a great way to create content. It's really turns into a content generating machine. Right now we're going live here and we're publishing this out. But after this is over, this is going to be able to be turned into bite-sized clips that you can publish as reels, as TikToks, as audiograms. You can take a quote from, the episode and turn it into a graphic. This really turns into a content generating machine. So you're never going to be stuck saying, I don't know what to post today. But also it builds your network. Like we were saying before, Jim, you and I connected over on in real life, but honestly, the majority of my connections have happened the other way around, where I will have someone come on the podcast. Now we're at, PodFest or Social Media Week Lima, and hey, you were on the podcast. Now we get to hang out in real life, and it feels like we already know each other. So it opens up your entire network when you have a podcast, because you don't need to worry about going to all these networking events. Anyone can hop on a Zoom for half an hour, and you have the opportunity to meet more people in your local city or more people throughout the world.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. I forgot that we had met at Podfest before Lima. So yeah, so we've seen each other 3 times this year. And Tim, I've only seen you once. I mean, what's going on with that?
Well, we've seen each other a few times, right?
Well, but I'm saying in person. Like we gotta do more in person stuff. But
I know, and we're on the same coast. I mean, we're slacking here, Tim.
Right. So Tim brings up a nice comment too. Is like, so let us know in the comments if you have a podcast, and you know what, drop the link to it so we can all check it out. Because I think I love what you said there, Katie, about how you can take the content and repurpose it. And I think the other thing, right? It's like you're actually doing a podcast, I think, that involves your local community, right? Where you're interviewing people there. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that also, kind of goes into our next question, and that's how you've seen it help businesses grow.
Yeah, well, and like I said with the realtor example, for me, I started my podcast because I wanted to get to know other Denver business owners. It was the middle of the pandemic, and I was stuck inside my house. This is not my house, but I was stuck in my basement, and I was like, gosh, I want to hear other stories. I want to do other business with other Colorado business owners. And it's been amazing to hear the stories of transformation that have happened just right here within the Colorado area. So I popped over here on the LinkedIn and just searched, business owner, founder, president, and went through anyone that lived in Denver that had those titles. The reason that I wanted to focus on Denver was so that I could refer other businesses to other Colorado-based businesses. So, I mean, we do a lot of business overseas now, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. Can be somebody just down the street that produces just as good of a product that might end up being even cheaper and has a faster turnaround time than just Googling something where someone has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on ads. So if we can support one another, it's going to help all of us grow. And that's where it started with Rocky Mountain Marketing, was to hear the other stories of entrepreneurship and what marketing has worked for them. Now it's been over 2 years, and I've changed the format a little bit, but I still sit down with one Denver-based business owner once a month to hear their story of entrepreneurship and what marketing works for them. And then 3 episodes a month, I sit down with different marketing professionals from all over the world to share one high-level strategy that works. The reason I did this is because I was going to all these conferences, and I was seeing different and going to virtual events during the pandemic. And I was seeing all these people that were putting out great tips and value. And I was like, man, I want my listeners to be able to learn from that. I want them to be able to grow. And I want to sit down and ask them my questions. If you're trying to learn something, or if you want to have the opportunity to talk to some of these people that you look to in your industry, that you look up to, a podcast is a great way to do it because you can sit down with them one-on-one for half an hour and pick their brain on a certain topic. So that's where the podcast has evolved, and it's I love doing it every week. It's definitely grown my business because now my network, I have over 130 episodes. Those are 130 people that now have had the opportunity to sit down with me, hear my story. They feel like they know, like, and trust me. I know and like and trust them. So it doesn't feel weird for them to refer business my way or to do business with me.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's interesting, because as we've been at all these podcast conferences, right? And I was blown away at, like, especially a podcast movement, and I love Podfest as well, but how many companies were there, right? I mean, and I saw, in the chat, our friend Laura Davidson from Shure is here. In fact, are you using a Shure mic? Is that a Shure mic I see there?
This is the Shure mic. This is the SM7B. This is okay. So so I can geek out on this for a little bit, and it's a funny story. As you can tell, I basically am sitting in a fishbowl here. And when I moved out of my basement, I lost good acoustics, and so the microphone that I had been using, while it was $100 off of Amazon or whatever, it was picking up all these windows and these high ceilings. So I was talking with my head in a box for all of the podcasts that I was doing. And people would walk by and be like, why do you put your head in that box? Because there's windows everywhere. It's like, oh, I'm podcasting and there's really bad echo. I switched over to this microphone and there's still a little bit of an echo, but there's 25-foot ceilings here and I'm surrounded by windows and I think I sound pretty darn good. So
Well,
just
you always sound good,
little
but
plug
yes.
for the microphone here.
Yeah, and Tim, yeah, shout out to Shure. And Tim, are you using a Shure microphone as well, or or if you're not, you don't have to say anything since Laura's watching. We don't want to. Yeah, and Katie too. If you get a chance, we want to drop the link to your Denver podcast. We had one of the viewers ask about getting the link to that. And,
Sure.
so yeah, that's
Sure.
Sure, no pun intended. But I think you bring up some great points about how this can really help us grow. And I love how, when you think about it, it reminds me of my friend Jeff C, who does podcast Social Media News Live. It's like Tim and I are getting free consulting right now because you're our guest, because you're teaching us about how to grow our business with podcasting. And so sometimes, even if you're a realtor, right, you could be interviewing a flooring person, you could be interviewing, someone that builds decks, and people can learn from them. And at the same time, you start to build that connection. It's like, you know what, I can now refer this person out because we've gotten to build that know, like, and trust. And then Chris Stone, my good friend Chris Stone, talks about how we're creating a legacy, right? Those 130 episodes that you talked about will be there forever. When your grandkids, will be able to listen to it, and your great grandkids, as long as, there's a way to get this digital content out there. And I think that's a pretty neat thing as well. And Laura shared, she has a podcast, and I'm going to geek out a little bit about this. Laura does this podcast called Song 43. I think what's cool about it is they're short, right? They're usually between 10 and 20 minutes. And she sings part of her podcast because she writes songs. She's got a really good voice. So make sure you check that out. So you have all these different ways that you can do a podcast. Chris and I with Dealcasters, with our interviews, we turn that into a podcast, and we're in the process of turning our episodes of the Tim and Jim Show, into a podcast as well, because we get some great content in it, and it may not be perfect, but that's why you edit. But also,
Well, real fast on that, Jim.
Yeah.
You say, you're like, oh, well, we don't edit, but we can edit some of it. But I really have found that a lot, unless you go off on a tangent or the conversation goes off the rails, people like hearing the unedited audio. I mean, that's why our fireside show has done so well, with the NFL show, is because we're in there, we're talking, you can hear the ahs, the ums, the you knows,
Mhm.
as I just do a giant but it sounds more authentic. And one of the things that I absolutely love about podcasting and audio, I mean, I know we're here on video, but one of the things I absolutely love about it is you can tell when someone is reading something. You can tell when something is produced. When you're with audio, you can tell very, very easy how authentic somebody is. And that's where,
Mm.
if someone's listening to you read something, or if they're listening to you just have a conversation like what we're doing, it builds the connection at lightning speed because they feel like you're talking to them. So while you say like, oh, we could edit this, I think that with what you have here, you can go ahead and publish this out. I mean, without doing a ton of editing to it, and people are going to respond just as well as if you were to go in and spend all that time editing a lot of it out. I think that it makes you seem a little bit more authentic.
Love that. Love that. Now, what do you think, too, before, because we're going to take a quick, I don't call it break, but we'll hear from our friends at StreamYard. But what do you think of the rise of, I guess if we call it video podcast, right? That seems to be a big thing that we're hearing about. And I guess even though you don't live stream your podcast, you are creating video content with it.
I am. Yeah. So it's exactly with what I was saying earlier. I was just using the audio, but when I use the video as well, so like here on StreamYard, you're publishing this out to all the different socials. But what if someone missed this? Or what if someone wants to pop on to, YouTube and watch it later? So I've actually published all of my podcasts as a video over on YouTube. And I turn, like I said before, the video into reels. I'll turn them into audio clips. I think that if you're spending the time to sit down with somebody, using a tool like StreamYard, or even if you wanted to use Zoom, I personally I use Riverside, but I mean there's so many different tools out there to record yourself. If you're spending the time to sit down and have this conversation anyways, hit record and use the video. Even if you don't want to publish the whole thing, you're going to have so many different pieces of content that you can publish out there later just from that 30-minute conversation podcast.
Love it. Love it. Tim, any thoughts before we hear from our friends at StreamYard?
No, this is a great conversation so far. Let's go to StreamYard. I'm ready.
All
I'm ready
right.
to dance to the StreamYard music.
All right.
And we're dancing, and we're back on the Tim and Jim show, and we're talking to Katie Brinkley all about.
Katie Brinkley, it's okay.
Yeah, Katie,
it happens
I'm
all
sorry.
the time.
I'm
No,
sorry.
you know what? It is a Freudian slip that I don't mind. It legit does happen all the time, and I'll take it. I mean, like at least they're what was the name of the newscaster? But anyways, yeah, they're from back in the day. There was a newscaster Brinkley,
Yes.
and at least you aren't confusing me with that guy. But
sorry.
No, that's funny. So, Tim, our
Jim.
next question is a big question for Katie, and that is for you, sir.
Yes. So what are the tools needed to get started with a podcast?
I think that when you decide that you want to have a podcast, like I said before, I didn't have a fancy dancy mic like this when I first started. But does it make me sound better? Absolutely. But I think that a lot of people think they need to have, all these different tools and gear. But I think that when you're first getting started you need a pen and a paper. What type of podcast do you want to have? Do you want to have it be an interview show like this? Do you want to have it just you and a co-host? Oh, there you are over there. You and a co-host. Do you want to have it be solo episodes? So sit down and figure out what type of show that you want to do. What is the goal that you want your listeners to come away with from listening to your episodes? And I think that also you want to make sure that you have enough content that you can share on a regular basis. Pod fade, Jim, we hear this at all these conferences. It is a very real thing. And the average lifespan of a podcast is only 8 episodes. So what I recommend doing is sitting down and recording 3 episodes right off the bat. And then that way you've already had the opportunity to batch your content. Not everyone has the capabilities to go live. I mean, I am one of them. And I book my guests with different times so that I can book them, record the episode, get all the assets created. I can figure out the social media, promotion for it. I can figure out how I'm going to work it into my emails. And I produce all of this, 3 to 4 weeks in advance. So I record the episodes and then push them out. So when you're first getting started, sit down, record those 3 episodes, get yourself a microphone. There are tools out there where all you need is your phone. But I think that if you get yourself a microphone, it makes you feel more invested in the project and in the podcast lifespan. Because if you're just talking into your phone, like, I missed it this week. Oh, well, sit down and get yourself that microphone. And I sure love my Shure. I have to say it's definitely changed my audio and makes my podcast sound much better. So get yourself a microphone, figure out what type of podcast you want to do. And then you can record via Zoom, which is a free tool. Like I said before, I record my stuff on Riverside. You can use it as a free tool or as a paid tool with that as well. So, I mean, it's not super hard to get started. I think that the hardest part to get started is just figuring out what type of show you want to have and recording those first 3 episodes, because once those are in the bank, it's smooth sailing from there. You don't have to worry about, gosh, who am I going to interview this week? You already have 3. And if there's no one good that can sit down with you, you can push it back a week and you're not going to be scrambling for a podcast for that week.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think sometimes that's right. That's where people freak out because they're like, oh, I've got to do something every week. And so like with what we're doing here as a live show, right, it's a little bit more pressure because we're like, okay, we're having it at a certain time and date. And so that's definitely a little bit different where like if you want to do, if we'll call it traditional podcast, you can actually, take a look at that. And let's see what Laura's saying. She's got to jump. Oh, cool. So she's going to, ring the bell on her LinkedIn page. Yeah. Laura did a great presentation at People of Video about microphones and mic technique. And she knows her stuff. She also did that at Podfest as well. So Laura, thank you so much for stopping by today. It was great to see you last week as well. And, but I love that you said audio, right? Because even when Tim and I talk to people about, video, the most important thing is audio. So you don't have to go get, fancy cameras and phones because as we like to say, people will forgive the bad video, but they will not forgive the bad audio. Because if your audio starts to sound really bad, right, it grates on your ears and you're just like, I can't take this anymore.
Well, and that's one of the things too, is I think that if you decide you want to do an interview show, not expect that all of your guests are going to show up with a microphone like this, but do prepare them that audio is important. So when I get my guests to book a time to record their episode, they have a full questionnaire to fill out, and I think that when you have that questionnaire, it sets expectations for all parties involved. Like, okay, well, you got to show up at least with, what Tim has, like the earbuds with the microphone, because that's going to sound better than just you talking into your computer mic. So make sure that you set expectations for your guest as well, because if you sound amazing talking into a microphone and, they're sitting in their car talking into their computer mic and you can hear traffic going by, it's gonna make the audio and the production of your podcast not sound quite as amazing.
Right. I would definitely agree. And so the final question we have for you today, unless we have some other audience questions, is what are some ways to grow your podcast audience for your business? And I know that you're a social media expert, so you probably have some pretty good ideas there.
I do. And this is the thing. We hear this all the time at podcast conferences, but who listens to podcasts? Well, people that listen to podcasts and other podcasters. But how do you get away from just the 50%, 51% of people in the United States that do listen to podcasts? How do you reach those 49% and turn them on to being a podcast listener? Well, it's going to where they are. And that's most often on some social media platform of some kind. And so again, this comes back to video, why you should record your video. And even if it's just one 30-second clip that you're using out of the entire interview, that video you can push out to your audience on social media. And one of the things that I do to get people to tune into each week's episode is I visit them in all the different ways that these channels want me to post. So whether it's on, just for Instagram, for example, I will take a 30-second reel, like a clip from the video, but I'll pop in beforehand and say, have you been thinking about starting a podcast for your business and don't really know where to start? Be sure to check out this week's episode of the Tim and Jim Show, where we sit down with Katie Brinkley, and then you go into a clip of me talking at something or you guys sharing something. And that's your trailer. So you've already grabbed their attention by showing your face, who your audience is used to seeing on a regular basis, giving them a little tease of what's to come, giving them a slight answer of their question, and then directing them, hey, go click the link in my bio, or, comment below and I'll DM you the link. Anyways, that's a great way to reach your audience that you've already built on these other social media platforms. Email is another great way. So in all of my emails, I'll try and at the bottom, like in this week's episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing, I sit down with Mark Savant, who was my guest this week, and we talk about what made him leave his 9-to-5 to start his dream of, so I'm telling people where they're already used to consuming content, like, hey, I have a podcast. I answer this question. Don't you want to tune in? So that is a great way to grow your podcast audience when you're going to reach these people that you've already connected with. They've already followed you on other social media platforms. And then hopefully one of these, if you show up on a regular basis telling them the different type of conversations you're having, something is bound to pique their interest. They're following you already for a reason, right? So showing up that way, I think, is a great way to kind of tease what else they can continue learning from you.
And do you have a favorite you would say that you really like to use, or do you think it kind of depends?
So I mean, the reel or TikTok of you kind of popping in first and then going to a clip, that's worked really well for me, as opposed to just sharing a clip. Showing my face and saying like, do you struggle with XYZ? That's what I talk about on this week's episode, and then going right on over to it. That's worked really well. And then I go into Instagram stories, which are just 24 hours long. And I'll kind of talk about the episode, like with what we go over. I won't share the clip there. And then with guests that are open to it, I'll go live with them on Instagram. So if I had Wave Wild, who's a TikTok expert, on the podcast. And then when her episode came out, she and I went live on Instagram together. It was great because all of her audience was then introduced to me. All of my audience was introduced to her. They got a little tease of what we have to offer and what we talked about in the episode. Man, these two are like having a great conversation here on Instagram Live. I want to hear the full thing. I'm going to go tune in. So when you have guests that are open to going live on Instagram with you, I think that is a great way to, again, cross-pollinate your audiences. collaboration over competition here. And especially if someone's sitting down with you for 30 minutes to share their story, and you're giving them the space, the microphone, the platform to share their story. I think that if they want to sit down with you for 5 minutes on Instagram isn't too much to ask.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. Have you started using anything, even maybe kind of post? I know, like my friend Madeline Sklar not only does a Twitter chat, Twitter Smarter, but then she does a Twitter Space. In fact, I'm on a space today from a chat I was on. So that's audio, and we're going to be talking about
Mhm.
building social trust with video. Have
Yeah.
you been into any spaces yet, or Clubhouse, or what do you think of those
So
things?
Clubhouse was my main jam for a solid year and a half, and I was taking people off. Like when their episode would air, we would do a Clubhouse room. But Twitter Spaces for me, I'm mostly using Twitter Spaces to talk NFTs and crypto, and it really is not in alignment with a lot of the messaging that I'm putting out on for the Rocky Mountain marketing stuff. So I try to kind of keep the conversations for each podcast platform specific. So on Twitter Spaces, I'll be popping into Spaces talking about different NFT projects or different NFT news. But uh, most of the time for Rocky Mountain Marketing, I will be doing Instagram content because that's where I have the second largest following.
That is so cool. Tim, any thoughts? Anything you wanted to add?
I'm just soaking in all the information, learning so much.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been awesome. So Katie, what I know one place people can connect with you is over on Instagram, and so we're sharing this here on the screen at I am Katie Brinkley. What do you have coming up here in the foreseeable future that we should know about?
Oh man. Well, I'm going to be attending the Crypto Business Conference in San Diego in about 2 weeks. So that'll be fun. We're going to be talking NFTs and all Web3 business, and I'll be doing a table talk there. And then Podfest in January. That's the next event for me. That's on the docket. I know we were talking about that, Jim, before we went live here, but I'm really looking forward to that event and in Orlando in January. So I got to start putting my nose to the grindstone and looking for some more events for 2023 because we're already, holy cow, almost already in October. But
Well, I guess you get kind of lucky because podcast movement will be in Denver next year.
I know. Although I do kind of like traveling to other places and seeing their cities. But yeah, I saw that podcast movement will be in Denver next year. So all I got to do is just hop on the light rail and head on downtown. So
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm planning to go. I think I might even apply to speak. We'll see what happens.
you
Um,
should.
and then you've got a great giveaway for us, and that is 5 tips to selling in the DMs without being spammy. So we've got the link there. We'll also share it into the chat on all the different channels for folks to go check that out because yeah, that's definitely been a challenge for a lot of us when we get these DMs and the first thing that they want to do is sell us. So yeah, definitely
Yeah, we all
appreciate
hate those DMs, but I mean, like you can have a lot of success on social media in the DMs when you know how to do it the right way. And that's what I talk about. It's my 5-step process. I give it all away and all my my secrets in it. But I think, what just really fast, since we're talking about social media here, with all of these social media platforms and having a podcast, you can find amazing guests on social media and you can find amazing shows to guest on. If you don't know if having your own podcast is the right strategy for you and your business, you can still have a podcasting strategy of you as a guest and going on to different shows. So don't discount social media for making those connections and having those conversations so that you can absolutely get on more podcasts. If you show up to different people's show as a guest and you have a microphone, you have the gear, you're ready to go, you have a media kit, you're going to get booked on a lot of shows and it's still going to help you grow your network and help you grow your business.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. In fact, that's something that I know I've talked with people about before is, you don't always need to have your own show, right? Being
Hmm.
a guest on other people's shows can be just as powerful because then you're getting to share your story. I mean, the advantage of us being the host and interviewing you is we're getting to learn from you. And sure, it's not necessarily, it's not, at least with our show, it's not about me and Tim, it's about our guest, like the amazing Katie Brinkley here today. So that's something to consider, right? If you're going to have a show and have someone on and then do all the talking, you're probably going to get a lot of people that don't want to be on your show because they're going to like, this person just talks about themselves the whole time. So I think that's a great point, right? So get that nice microphone that will help you sound your best. And even I think, I don't know, I haven't used it, but I know some people use it, right? Anchor, you could do it
Hmm.
on your phone, and there are ways to connect a microphone to your phone. So that's something to
Yeah,
consider.
there's like these fun little microphones like this that you could talk
Ooh,
into,
look at
and it
that.
even sounds better than.
Is that on Amazon? You should do a product video if you haven't
I
already.
should do a little product video for this, but I use it in my social media
Nice.
this week on the podcast because it's funny. It's funnier talking into this,
Tim, you've got a
but it
big
sounds
event.
good.
Yeah, Tim, you've got a big event coming up. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jim. My event, Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer, is coming up in person here in Pennsylvania on November 5th. So if you're a cancer patient or a survivor or supporter, come show up, come share your story, come feel inspired, come support others, come be supported. Here in Pennsylvania, perspectivesoncancer.com. It's a free event. It's in partnership with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Would love to come. Would love to come. Would love to come. No, would love to come. Would love to see you here. So I need more coffee. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, and then so who's going to be in Houston? And
I'm going to be in Houston. Yes, I'm
oh,
going to. Andrea Sanchez is having an in-person Worthy Rally for Hope and Kindness. She holds a monthly rally. She's just had her 28th rally. She holds it on Zoom the last Saturday of every month, and I'll be speaking at her rally in Houston on October 15th. So yes, I will be there. Will you be there, Catherine Lang?
I guess we'll see. But Gail has a question. She wants the link to your little microphone. So you have
Yeah,
your Amazon affiliate link. Please don't get
I will. I will. Yeah, shoot me a DM over on Instagram, and I will send you the link for this because it's really fun. Okay, and then just last thing on this, but it has like you can actually take off the top, and it looks like a little microphone. So I mean, you can. I don't know, and the audio is actually very good. So yeah.
that is very cool. Yeah.
I'm
So
not saying to use that for your podcast, but if you
right,
want to be
but if
kind
you
of
need it,
silly and have something that you can hold.
yeah. Well, Gail likes to do TikTok, so I could see where this is going with that
Yeah.
microphone, I think, so,
Yeah, shoot me a DM, Gail.
yeah. Awesome. So this has been amazing. Katie, thank you so much for being with us today. And we will be back next week. Haven't finalized the guest yet for next week, but same bat time, same bat channel. Prayers, like I said, out to the folks in Florida. Uh, hoping for the best, even though I know it's going to be very trying for everyone. And Katie, thank you so much for being here. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Katie.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.